Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media, where we're starting a whole new season, and it is called The Season for Treason. Thomas, he tweeted out last night that Bill Barr has it all and can declassify anything. What do you say?
Well, the statement that he made is very, very clear, and it's essentially saying no need for a special counsel. We're going to do this right this time. We're going to investigate it from the top of the DOJ down. Now remember, the FBI works for the DOJ. Remember, the CIA shouldn't exist. There's no justification for the CIA's existence.
And don't forget that 500 of those DOJ attorneys are all senior executive service, and they better do their job or they're going to be traitors too.
And that's something else that has to be seriously looked at, because I would say every single member of this conspiracy that was working for the United States government was a member of the senior executive service. I'll bet a nickel on that one. Most of them we already know were. So what's he doing here? He's basically saying, I don't need to write an executive order. I don't need to create an independent counsel. I don't need to create a special counsel. I'm just enacting the law the way that it is. And the head of the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, is going to personally conduct this. Why wouldn't they? And then, they tried to get him to recuse himself because of former remarks that he made about the ridiculousness of the Mueller investigation and other such things. Sally Yates and her ridiculous statement that she wouldn't support Trump's ban on people coming in from countries where Obama has dropped bombs on them and killed 2 million of them. Well, that's what Obama did also. So Barr came out, he said those statements. They tried to get him to recuse himself. He wouldn't. So they've tried everything they can, but now it's very simple. Barr and a single lawyer could put the 36 people we've named in jail.
Well, they need to start off with the top guy over there at the DOJ, Bruce Orr, because he is the paymaster for these SES 500 attorneys. He needs to be the first one to walk out with handcuffs.
Now, let's just be perfectly clear about this. I guess there was a clarification remark made by Trump when someone asked him recently about this. He says, yes, Barr can look into the Brits, the Ukrainians, the Russians, anybody. He can look into Robert Mueller himself. He didn't say that, but he can. He can look into the way that the special counsel was constructed, what it was that they were hiding, the cover-up.
If you're going to look at the origins of the coup, and you really look at the origins, they could go all the way back to 9/11 and the relationship that Robert Mueller had at that time with a UK operative named Arvinder Sambhai.
Yes, and what this will indicate is that the Five Eyes, and we probably will be talking about that here during this broadcast, but the Five Eyes are ended. They are no more. Alexander Downer, acting as one of the top representatives from Australia, basically abnegated any type of integrity that there ever was, which there was very little, with the Five Eyes community and the intelligence sharing and cooperation that goes on between Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, and Britain. So what's going to happen now? When it comes down to surveillance activities, as it says, that Attorney General can look into the surveillance activities. Oh, that means Robert Hannigan is busted because he was surveilling Trump Towers. So what Trump called wiretapping, that will have to be looked at. Oh, then we're going to have to look at Clapper's surveillance of every single American. Oh, that's not so good, because he lied and said that wasn't happening. Then he lied and said it was happening. And then he basically said he'd stop, and he hasn't stopped at all. And then Clapper, of course, is gone, and Dan Coates is continuing the same exact nonsense. He's going to have to look into, good Attorney General Barr, the FISA court, and all four of the FISA court applications and the information, the supplemental information for those applications, which will certainly indicate Stephen Halper, Christopher Steele. It will not indicate that all the money came from in the first $12 million from the Democratic National Committee, Hillary Clinton victory campaign, John Podesta and Hillary. So it won't go. It'll have to look into that, you see, because that's what was hidden by the investigation. It's going to go into the 5 different buckets that Nunes keeps talking about, that he has requested investigations into them. So it's already been set up. Nunes has set up exactly what needs to be looked into. There's about 36 people, 36 people in the 5 buckets that we've named, and those are on this side of the ocean. And then there's the people on the other side of the ocean. And those people we've also named. And Nunes recently wrote a letter to the president saying, if you're going to go over to Britain, make sure to ask Theresa May these questions. And when the questions he would ask would lead to the very things we're saying are the indictable evidence for the spying, espionage, Five Eyes, British, treasonous. It's not treason, it's sedition. It's a war action. They are war actors, and these go to Arvinder Sambhai, Alison Saunders, Robert Hannigan. These are the top dogs who Alexander Downer is trying to get out in front of and say that, he didn't set up George Papadopoulos. Yes, he was. He was also in London, also working as the High Commissioner in London for Australia. So he was right in with that little gang. And then, of course, recently, the articles that came out in the newspaper. What's the newspaper?
Oh, it was a Telegraph.
Telegraph.
Well, Michael called us about that because he's reviewing that, and we're going to have another audio on that probably a little later on. And to your point.
Yeah, so the Telegraph, that's an alibi. Those 2 articles are alibis for the Brits. Alexander Downer's recent 2 days ago statement that he came out into the press unsolicitedly and stated that he's completely innocent. That's his alibi. And so we're going to see the alibis pouring out now because the unredacted materials are coming out. The declassified materials are coming out. Trump just said that Barr can declassify anything he wants in this investigation. He is not waiting for Horowitz. We thought they might wait for Horowitz. But remember, Horowitz has no indictments. Huber has no indictments. They will not have indictments. So if you're waiting for their report to, go after all those sealed indictments, you're going to be waiting. Because why? We already know that the politicalization between the FBI and the CIA, DOJ and FBI, which Horowitz was looking into, produced Andrew McCabe going to a grand jury, which we don't even know where it went. We don't even know if that grand jury is over, but obviously Andrew McCabe is not going to be punished. No one will be punished. So forget Horowitz. Our attention is on Barr. What's he going to go after? All 5 buckets. Dozens of people who've already been turned in with the evidence by Nunes, who's already done the investigating himself.
But what about all these plea deals that Mueller would have given any of these turkey butts?
Yeah, I'm going to go there in a second.
Okay.
And then, of course, Barr has to look at Crossfire Hurricane. He has to look at the Carter Page dossier. He has to look at the George Papadopoulos frame-ups. He has to look at the fact that it wasn't Trump. It was Hillary that was in bed with Putin. So then he's got to look at the real Russian connections. And that would be Podesta and Hillary. He's got to look at the real espionage, which was Hillary and her server and John Podesta not securing anything. None of it was secure. Everyone could get to it. And he will have to come up with a different statement about Imran Awan and the espionage because it goes directly back to the accusations that the Russians hacked the DNC, which they did not. Imran Awan set up a complete secondary system and was selling every speck of the information to anybody who wanted to buy it. So, what we should see, if we actually do what this statement says, learn the truth. And then it says it's going to restore confidence in our public institution. That ain't going to happen. That ain't going to happen. Here's the only way that can happen. The only way, in my opinion, that it can happen, that we can restore faith in these public institutions like the CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, National Security Division.
Well, who cares? They need to be shut down.
Oh, well, you're always ahead of me. You're always thinking ahead of me.
No, I'm not, but it's obvious. They are corrupt. We don't need a national police group. That's what the FBI is. I mean, they go out and they run these false flags on Americans, and then they go in and investigate it. Of course, they never find anybody, and the patsy always dies. We're sick and tired of FBI false flags, from 9/11 all the way up to all the names that I can't mention or YouTube will throw us off. Okay, and that's for one. And the CIA, how come Gina Haspel is sitting in the London office when all this is going down and she doesn't know about it? And if she does know about it, where is her report to the president? I'm telling you, they're all dirty and they need to go. And there's no such thing as good rank and file, because if your rank and file can't find these crimes under their own roof, they are not deserving of being agents anywhere.
Their rank, okay. And the reason they're rank is because of what you just said, Betsy. And I'm going to go to what you just indicated and agree with you. And then I'm going to give you my list. And here's the deal. If you witness treason and you don't turn it in, you are committing the crime of treason.
Well, then, what is Christopher Wray doing right now, holding back on the stuff
Correct.
that's being... Christopher Wray is a traitor of the United States.
Correct.
So is Gina Haspel.
Correct.
And we all need to grow a pair out here and call this stuff out the way it is. And you better start using these words in your vernacular so other people get used to it. And the words are treason. And their espionage, and its execution, and its military or tribunals. It's all of these things. People need to get prepared for what is coming.
They sure do. And we need to do what John F. Kennedy said. Completely dissolve the CIA. It doesn't need to exist. Everything the CIA does is lying, cheating, stealing, killing, murdering, and nothing they do can they tell you about because it's all lying, cheating, stealing. So John Brennan, you need to go to jail. You're a treasonous, traitorous, seditious, basically radical Islamic fascist terrorist here in our country.
That should only be a holding place until his final outcome is meted.
Then you got to close the FBI counterintelligence department. Why would there... Think of this. Federal Bureau of Investigation is supposed to work within domestic borders. Why would there ever need to be a counterintelligence inside domestic borders?
Because they're running an overthrow of our government.
Correct.
That's it, period. This is an egregious attempt to overthrow the United States by this communist infiltration of the Democrats and the senior executive service.
In other words, counterintelligence under the FBI is working against Americans with lying, cheating, espionage, surveillance, infiltration, targeting, the whole thing. All the evil of the CIA is in the FBI counterintelligence department. And that's where this thing ran. And Bill Priestap, whose name hardly ever comes up, he's one of the big criminals. But we have Comey ran it. And Comey ran 28 separate attempts to bring down Trump during the election as president-elect and as president. These were counterintelligence operations. They were never told to the acting, sitting president, and they were ran out of the White House before Trump got there. So the FBI needs to clean house. And remember, the FBI is there with the direction of the Department of Justice, which has at its top the 500 members of the senior executive service that are... Bruce Orr is a member of them, and that's the reason he can't be fired, though he is a treasonous, traitorous, seditious criminal.
But he doles out their big bonuses.
Well, he was the one in charge of investigating international crime. Well, this is international crime. He was the back channel for Allison Saunders, the Queen's prosecuting attorney, who came here illegally, met with him and Nellie as the back channel 4 days before the Trump Tower meeting. Now,
how cozy. They commit the crimes and then they get to investigate their crimes.
Yes, and so the DOJ is there to cover up the senior executive service crimes. That's what it's all about. And the White House crimes. And anybody who's part of the bureaucracy that is part of the in crowd, in other words, anybody who donates to Hillary Clinton's foundation to make sure that she can steal that money. Anybody who's donated to Hillary Clinton, I'm sorry, you're a fool because there was no foundation for you to donate to, and you'll eventually not be able to write that donation off. And you knew it when you made the donation. Yeah. So what we're going to say is very simple. No CIA, no FBI counterintelligence, no NSA surveillance of Americans. That was ordered by the president. It's been ordered by every president. There is no justification for it, and anyone who participated in it, in any branch of our government, should have to go to jail because they know that it's illegal. Spying on Americans is illegal, and we know that Obama said, take all the NSA raw material, allow anybody to have it that wants it, go out there, find anything on Trump, grab it, secure it, hide it from Trump, and use it in the resistance. In other words, that wasn't a bold-face order to people who wish to commit treason, to the traitors who wish to be a seditious resistance to a sitting president led by Barack Obama himself. And then we know paid for by Hillary Clinton and the whole Democratic Party. Many people were involved in that. But what we got to do is we have to stop any surveillance of Americans. We have to stop the Five Eyes. Those aren't our friends. We cannot share intelligence anymore with Britain.
No,
period.
The Five Eyes was an excuse to keep an eye on America from the Queen's end, the Privy Council, the Queen. And I say the Queen, I'm making it personal, because that old lizard lady's been on the throne directing all this from the day that she became Queen. And if she's not directing it, then the people around her are doing it. And we need to take that out. They set up this Five Eyes to keep an eye on all of their so-called colonists.
That's right.
It's time for us to end the American Revolution finally and get Britain out of our business.
We're not vassals of the monarchy.
And in doing so, we're going to help the British patriots over there who are fighting the same evil. Folks, this is the evil empire we are all fighting across the world. So do your part and secure your borders and make sure your nation is kept out of the globalist hands.
And we're going to have to end all corporate intelligence because a whole bunch of it is British, like
like
L3.
Lockheed.
Yes.
What's that? The Queen owns Lockheed, has controlling shares.
She has
and they're
the
the
golden
ones
share.
that's spying. And she's our enemy. Of course they're spying on us.
So L3, the largest corporate intelligence agency, just folded back into SAIC, which is the In-Q-Tel's international group. It's the same thing. It's all the Brits. So, yeah, you talk Lockheed Martin, you talk L3, you talk SAIC, you talk Serco, you talk the Crown Agents, you talk EP. It doesn't matter. Anywhere you look that money flows, you're going to find the Brits. But get the corporations out of intelligence. There are 850,000 right now top secret security clearances given out. And most of those people aren't responsible for any of them because they didn't take the right vows. They're not in the military, and they didn't sign the right contracts. And so they can get out of being whistleblowers. They can get out of being spies and giving all this stuff to other people. We also need to end the FISA court, period. The FISA court came up for review in December of 2016. They found out that it was 100% in noncompliance, both internationally and especially domestically, through James Comey, who never pulled a single FISA court warrant in the entire time he was the head of the FBI, including the one that everyone thinks he pulled for Carter Page, which he did not. He put in applications for Title I. That means that he would have had to have sworn that Carter Page was a Russian spy, as indicated in this FISA court warrant application and in the dossier, the Russian dossier. So he didn't. He signed a national security letter swearing that Carter Page was a spy. We have to end all national security letters. If the head of the FBI can run a coup against the president because of national security letters, and a Peter Strzok can do all that we know he did, and he's not even fired from the CIA, he continues to be an active agent of the CIA in counterintelligence, working in Iran and working against us as we try to figure out what's going on.
We actually pay our enemies to do this to us.
We paid Stephen Halper $1.4 million to help be the handler of Christopher Steele, who unfortunately was ripped off. He was only paid, a few $100,000 for what he did. But remember, he didn't write nothing. He just took the 6 different forms of the dossier and every speck of made-up nonsense anyone could make from the Democratic Party and from the weaponized FBI, CIA, DOJ, State Department, White House, and that's what went into it. So anyone who could read it that believes it's a piece of intelligence is an idiot and should be fired from their job, like Sir Charles Farr, who went over every sentence in the dossier with Christopher Steele and then told Americans that it was real. Charles Farr, you're an idiot. A third grader would know when they read that it was fake. Seriously, an intelligence third grader, I'm not exaggerating, and a normal fifth grader would know that it was fake, okay? So, all counterintelligence against Americans must end, no matter where it comes from. The Office of Director of National Intelligence, the DIA, it doesn't matter where it came from. There cannot be such a thing as a counterintelligence operation against Americans. If they have done something wrong, then by golly, arrest them and don't play the counterintelligence game of trying to set them up for somebody bigger. Most of the people arrested for being Islamic terrorists in America were supported by FBI and CIA agents. The money was given to them. They were taught how to make the bombs by the CIA and the FBI. They were set up. They were frame-ups. What are we doing about the camps? The multiple camps of radical Islamic terrorists in America with weapons training, explosives training right here in America? Have we not closed those down? No, we haven't even looked into them.
Because the FBI is not doing its job.
And the other thing we have to close down, because I'm sick of this, fake justice. No more plea deals. A plea deal means that you just stabbed the Queen of Justice in her heart. You can't use your position as a judge, as a lawyer, or anything on the court to abnegate justice by giving a plea deal to a criminal so that criminal can turn in supposedly a bigger criminal, like Michael Cohen. His plea deal, he should have gone to jail for life along with his wife, because why? They ran the Russian mafia, New York City taxi medallion business and still do. And everyone knows this. Everyone knows it. It's like saying you don't know who the mafia is in New York City. That's just stupid. And anyone who's ever been a New York City mayor knows exactly who the criminals are. And anyone who ever worked in the Southern District or the Eastern District of New York for the Department of Justice knows all the criminals. They're in bed with every single one of them. And that's the way that it is. Fake justice. We have to stop giving immunity deals. You give it... Look, Robert Mueller gave an immunity deal, I'm certain. I'll bet a nickel on this one. To who?
Joseph Mifsud.
And to James Comey. So James Comey can no longer be prosecuted for all the things that he testified that were part of his immunity deal. That is pure evil from hell.
Well, no, that's the Jesuit way.
It should never happen. That's not justice. And we know that they have hidden, during the Robert Mueller investigation, lots of exculpatory evidence which would have proven Trump innocent, proven George Papadopoulos innocent, proven Michael Flynn innocent, proven Manafort Manafort wasn't really innocent. Gates, he was innocent. Proven, all these people could have been proven innocent. But why? Long ago, Comey and Mueller made it that exculpatory evidence is under the control of federal investigators in the federal court, and they have the legal right to withhold the very evidence that would prove that their case is fallacious, fraudulent, and should be thrown out of court.
That shows you, because that was done many years ago, the planning and the conniving that has gone into this overthrow of America. This just wasn't a botched little coup. This was long planned out, wasn't it?
Yes, Janet Reno planned a long time ago when she redid all the regulations and rules for independent counsel, special counsel, and how that's bled over into grand juries. We need to end all special counsels. There shouldn't be such a thing. There's only one reason for a special counsel, and that's if you have 100% proof that the White House and the Department of Justice are actually working together in some type of conspiracy, so you have to choose someone outside of them to look at them. But we saw Robert Mueller didn't look at the Department of Justice. We saw that Michael Horowitz wasn't even able to do an Inspector General look at what Robert Mueller was doing, so they hid the whole thing. It might as well have been sealed as tight as Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama's education records, and all of his personal records are still sealed to this moment, folks. And that is justice. No, that's fake justice.
Yeah, but citizens took up the cause of doing this. When you can't find someone on the outside to do it, citizens like us said, hey, we're going to start looking this. We will expose this.
We have to. We're going to have citizen courts if this doesn't go the right way with Barr. We will have to. And we'll have to literally do citizens' arrests, have a citizen court, and do common law. And we'll have to prosecute these people because they have attacked the U.S. Constitution. And we, the people, it's our right to defend the U.S. Constitution, even outside of the realm of federal courts, who actually, in many of these cases, they don't have the standing to make the determinations they're making.
Because don't forget it, citizens. This is our country. Those people up there were there to serve us. But what they did was serve themselves. Now, we need to go into the next tweet. By the way, remember, if you want to read the tweets, go into the description box. There is a link there. This is a retweet from Donald Trump from Tom Fitton. FBI refuses to search text messages under FOIA. Director Wray needs to step up and stop this stonewalling that protects corrupt former FBI officials, Comey, McCabe, Page, and Strzok.
Yes, and you can't do that. These FOIA requests, what they're meeting is the following. They are requesting the text messages and communications, all communications. Now remember, James, of the following people, John Kerry, James Comey, James Baker, Bruce Orr, Loretta Lynch, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Sally Yates, and there's a whole other list. Now, the rest of the page and struck messages, okay? Because remember, out of the 55,000, we only got 283, and those were handpicked by Strzok himself, allowed to be handpicked by Horowitz. So what is really going on here? They have to stonewall this. The very dates of the real criminal text messages back and forth between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok were all missing. And then they say, oh no, the phones we were using from that date on, oh, they didn't record any of the messages. Oh, well, we're going to extract all of our personal remarks from our government phones, our government accounts.
The bottom line is citizens have the right to see if in any of these texts these people talked assassination. Among other things, I want to know.
And they did, because we've already found that the ones that they even released indicate that. And so we'll find about the leaks. We'll find out about all these different things. But we already have all of them. Dennis Montgomery, who created the Hammer program, which was built upon William Binney's old program, which had many names. There are many names for these programs. But all these things were already gathered up. We already have all this information. And it's already been turned over in millions of pages to the FBI in case they lost their copy of it. Remember, they lost all the Strzok and Page messages, and then all of a sudden,
we shouldn't have an FBI. They can't keep records.
And then remember, the Strzok and Page messages were all lost. Then Horowitz found thousands of them, and then all the other 55,000 were lost.
But then they gave it to the criminal to decide what he was going to report or not. They literally gave Peter Strzok the opportunity to remove text that he didn't want us to see.
Well, someone just told me that under cases like this, since they obviously hid it, we can assume the worst and charge them for that. So the evidence not being able to be found, and that's what is laughable, the FBI can't find James Comey's text messages. Now, by the by, those are top secret, secure communications that must be kept for many, many years to come. They can't disappear. Now, we know that many of these people had their own personal accounts, which they should all go to jail for, because they were talking all this collusion, corruption, obstruction, all on their personal...
And perhaps assassination.
To hide it. And assassination to hide it. We know that was true with Obama, with Lynch, with Hillary, with all of them. All of them. They all had agreements that said they couldn't, and they all did. And now, if they can't produce the evidence, and they say it's lost... then somebody's got to go to jail, because this is what drove our country. These are the top people in our country, and they can't find the messages that show the conspiracy for the coup d'etat? Oh, I bet they can't.
Well,
fine, send them to jail because they can't find them.
But, Thomas, from what I understand is that if they've lost all this, if you were on a jury, you could assume the worst, couldn't you?
Correct.
So we need to assume that all of these people, since they can't find their text, were planning an assassination of Donald J. Trump.
Every word they wrote. There is no such thing as a personal part of a message between Lisa and Peter Strzok and Page. No such thing. Not possible. I don't care that they were lovers. They might have been talking sex. The sex texts. All 55,000 of them will indicate there was no love affair between Lisa and Peter at all. That was an excuse to get rid of 55,000 or so emails. And they said that they struck all messages that were personal. They struck from those text messages that we have seen all attachments and all references, I love this, to any senior executive service member. So if we want the truth, we're not going to get it until Tom Fitton gets his FOIA request. And then remember, Tom Fitton's FOIA requests are ignored just like WikiLeaks content is ignored, just like the whistleblowers' content, Vault 7 is ignored. all of it's ignored because they say, oh, it was taken illegally, so therefore the government is not going to acknowledge if any of it's true, when we know it is all true, because WikiLeaks has never had a single page proven to be false. These are government documents. We have the proof. And then what do they say? Well, Dennis Montgomery, we're just going to completely ignore you. Oh, sorry, William Binney, we're going to completely ignore you. And Snowden and Chelsea Manning. We're ignoring all the content that you revealed, WikiLeaks, because we're just going to play like it doesn't exist.
Yes, but Bill Barr can now look at it, can't he?
It can all be entered as evidence because any speck of that evidence can be shown to the person who wrote it, as we saw with the struck page messages, and say, did you do this? Did you write this? What did you mean by this? And yes, they have to admit that it's theirs because we have the evidence. So what's going to happen? It's just going to be the biggest mess that you have ever seen in your entire life. We're going to see the end of Five Eyes. We're going to see the end of some intelligence agency illegal counterintelligence components. They're going to have to simply be closed. Well, they're illegal.
When Nancy Pelosi talks about cover-up and that Donald Trump is trying to do something to cover up, what she's really saying, I think, is that she and her group are trying to cover up assassination attempt.
Yes.
That's the big cover-up here.
She was aware. She was in the Gang of Eight. She was aware that the whole thing was fake. She had the dossier in her hand as one of the first people. As I say, matter of fact, let's do this sometime, Betsy. Can we please have a session where I read just the beginning sections of this stupid PP dossier, and then listen. If you believe it, you need to go to another channel. Because you're just too stupid to be here. Because no one could possibly believe this document. It's so fake. It's so stupid. It is so exaggerated. There's not one single speck of evidence, content, proof, justification, verification, nothing.
Okay, let's move on to the next tweet. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I get a little worked up over the PP dossier.
And we already know how you feel about that.
Yeah, sorry.
When is Twitter going to allow the very popular conservative voices that it has so viciously shut down back into the open? It's time. Woo-hoo.
He is telling them, he's warning them that he's going to charge them with racketeering. It's too late. He's already got the evidence. All the people who've been shadow banned, who've been cut off. I forget the number now. Literally 3,000 major conservative sites were closed down by Facebook. And that doesn't count the algorithms that were manipulated to make sure you didn't get there even before they were shut down. So what we're talking about is Facebook, Google is now going to be hit with racketeering, and they're going to be told that everything they have done is a paid political announcement. It's a paid political action, and it's against the Federal Election Commission. But more than that, it's against racketeering, because they knew full well that this was a politically charged, politically motivated action that affected national security, meddled in our elections. 100%, we know they meddled in our elections.
Mark Zuckerberg would go to prison?
No one who runs a corporation ever goes to prison or gets executed for their crimes. Why? Because they're corporations. They simply go bankrupt.
Oh, so it will go bankrupt.
Yes, but not until its bones are picked, and it'll probably just close down and come up as a different thing, just as all British corporations do. That's the whole point of corporations. They are not culpable. They are not citizens. You cannot hold them responsible for the deaths that they have created. Murder. How many tobacco company executives went to jail for the murder of multi-millions? I won't even give you a number. You'll say I'm exaggerating. I would not be exaggerating. Let's just say tens of millions of deaths of tobacco, directly murdered them, knowing that was racketeering.
Okay, but
how many of them went to jail?
So we're basically saying that even though that they're charged with racketeering, the individuals that we know that run these corporations, nothing's going to happen to them.
No, and most of them have already jumped ship anyway.
Okay, so let's get back to Twitter. It's time. It's not just the shutting them off, it's that shadow banning is going on. People can't push out our post all the time. I hear that.
Oh, it's horrible what's going on. And Trump has them. Remember, he said to people, please send your information of the way that this is working to us. And they're going to simply analyze it and AG Barr is going to look at this too. This is racketeering on the biggest level in political history in America.
Okay, next tweet. Intelligence agencies were used against an American president. This Devin Nunes, Shannon Bream, Fox News. This should never happen to a president again. Dems are furious at Robert Mueller for his findings. No collusion, no obstruction. Now they should go back to work and legislate.
You see, he was willing, our good president, to forgive these jerks, knowing how stupid they are, how evil they are, and how ensconced the senior executive service and the stay-behind bureaucracy, the do-nothing bureaucracy. He knows all about it, and he was willing to somewhat forgive them, but not anymore, because they've ruined 2 years of his work. If they hadn't been attacking him nonstop with nonsense...
They took it away from the American people.
Totally.
We demand that 2 more years be added on to his term, because the first 2 years he was trying to just get to the table to do some business.
He needs a do-over for the entire time that Comey and Robert Mueller were attacking him,
yes,
which make it a 2-year do-over.
Yes.
And then we need to impeach Nancy Pelosi. We don't need to impeach the president. And if she keeps going the direction she's going, because they just released her bar bill. Did you see her bar bill on airplanes?
Now, would that
$101,000 in bar bills.
Well, but she's going to have another bar bill.
I've told everyone she's an alcoholic and she's on the drugs for Alzheimer's. That you cannot drink alcohol when you take those.
Honey, just let her drink all she wants.
She's going to drop over.
She doesn't understand. She too will succumb to Mother Nature.
Trump even posted on his Twitter the most ridiculous. Some of her speeches recently where she can't put a sentence together. She slurs every word, and it isn't because of her teeth falling out of her head. Now, I haven't even started here.
Well, then get started.
Okay, there was collusion. Hillary with Russia, Podesta with Russia, Brennan with Russia. Remember, John Brennan went to Russia as soon as Trump came to power. And he did not meet with his equivalents, and it was a hidden meeting. He went there to get the names of the GRU agents anyway. And then Comey with Russia. Oh, big deal, because Comey was working with the Ukrainians and all the Russians, Alexandra Chalupa and the whole group of them, Sergei Milian. And so, yeah, there was a lot of collusion. The obstruction is now. The obstruction was the special counsel. The obstruction was the 13 different committees and their different names that became the special counsel. The obstruction was the CIA counterintelligence operation and the joint group that worked with the FBI counterintelligence and the DOJ National Security Division and the Secretary of State weaponized 7th floor of Hillary Clinton, Jonathan Weiner, Victoria Nuland, the whole group. That's who obstructed justice, so we need to impeach the entire House. We need to impeach anyone who votes for impeachment because they are, in fact, obstructing justice. Because they know that Trump is innocent after 8 investigations. For them to continue to obstruct justice, that is a national security issue. They are, again, attacking a sitting president. It's not Trump complaining. He doesn't care about them. It's because they're stopping his national security policies. They tried to tell him that he can't defend the country. They tried to tell him he can't build a wall. They tried to tell him there's no crisis on the border.
Well, of course they do, because there are enemies. And as soon as people wake up and realize the Democrats are enemies, they infiltrated themselves inside our government and are creating this havoc. They are trying to change our Constitution bit by their rules and regulations and their corrupt federal courts. So, all right, let's go on.
And they're trying to obstruct Trump from doing his job, protecting the country.
Yes.
They are criminals. They're George Soros candidates. They're open border candidates.
Yes.
And they are still attempting a color revolution, trying to abnegate an election for a duly elected president. This is war, folks, and it's happening right in D.C., and it was spawned from London.
If they try to impeach President Trump, who has done nothing wrong, no collusion, they will end up getting him reelected. That comes from Lindsey Graham, South Carolina. Impeachment is for high crimes and misdemeanors. There were no high crimes and misdemeanors except for those committed by the other side.
No, that's incorrect. Presidents can be impeached for you don't have to have high crimes and misdemeanors because misdemeanors isn't defined, high crimes isn't defined. So there's actually been actions in the past that say that certain patterns of behavior are impeachable, and that's what they're going to go for. It doesn't matter. They'll pass the impeachment. Now, here's what was supposed to happen, okay? A.G. Barr was supposed to be questioned during the Judicial Committee, the House's Judicial Committee hearing by two lawyers. Those were the two best prosecutors for the Democrats in this country. The two most wicked, criminal prosecutors with the experience to go after A.G. Barr. And what they were going to try to prove is that the Office of Legal Counsel gave bad advice to him and Rosenstein, and that there was obstruction. And that obstruction, they're going to use those 10 points of obstruction in the part 2 of Mueller's investigation, his caca dossier, as I like to call it, the Mueller report. High treason, there's where the high crimes and treasons are in that report, and it was Mueller who did them along with Comey. But the point is, they're gonna get it. They absolutely will put impeachment on the floor. Now, here's the problem. Those lawyers aren't going to come to their defense because they will vote and they will win. If they put the vote of impeachment on the floor, they will win. All they need is 50%.
Well, they'll win in the House.
They'll win the House. But that doesn't mean anything. Okay? They can't prosecute anybody. Then they're going to have to send their representatives, those two lawyers, who are going to use what they didn't get, and they didn't get to question Barr, to the Senate to carry on the prosecution before before John Roberts is going to have to conduct the impeachment. Will they get 2/3 supermajority in the Senate for impeachment? No. Will they have any evidence? No. Will there be any substance? No. Why? Because the impeachment calendar has been blown. They were going to put impeachment on the floor early on so that the entire time between now and 2020, Trump was in impeachment, but it would stay messing around in the House with these stupid investigations. But now that the investigations are being blown out of the water, now that Trump is using executive privilege, which he hadn't used before, and now that's blowing their minds because he can use executive privilege all day long, just like Barack Obama did, never answer any questions to anybody, seal all your personal everything. If Barack Obama could seal his personal educational records, which he actually got U.S. federal funding to go to school, then you can bet that Trump can block his personal stuff by executive privilege. But all that's going to do is mean exactly what he said. If you're going to do an investigation and an impeachment, and that's what he means by investigation, because that's what happens with an impeachment.
He said investment. He's talking about investing in the country versus impeachment track.
No, what I'm saying is when he says, no, you cannot do investigation and do legislation at the same time. That is true. The impeachment could absorb them for 2 years until the vote.
But because no proof, no collusion, no obstruction, if these guys and gals in the House of Representatives votes for impeachment, what they're saying is that they're guilty of obstruction.
And here's what I recommend, Mr. President. You get to defend yourself, not only in the House, but in the Senate you'll win. Please choose Trey Gowdy, who knows all the information and is a lawyer, to represent you in the House.
I don't know about old Rooster Head. He never came through on a darn thing.
But he's the only one who right now actually knows the truth because he's read all that. And he could stand up in the House and it would literally be, as Lindsey Graham is saying here, it would mean that Trump would win the election, but worse than that, they would show who they are. But Lindsey is wrong because they can impeach Trump without a single crime. They can just say there's a pattern that they didn't like.
Okay, and then the final tweet today.
But wait. This will destroy the Democrats. This will turn the tables. And because they have the majority, it will basically be political Russian roulette. I had to get my little Russian roulette. Pelosi is playing Russian roulette with the gun to her head.
Yes, she is. And then she's going to have all these people vote on this.
And it's the Russians who made her do it.
Okay.
Russia.
I don't know why the radical left Democrats want Bob Mueller to testify when he just issued a $40 million report that states loud and clear for all to hear, no collusion and no obstruction. How do you obstruct a no crime? Dems are just looking for trouble and a do-over.
They want that do-over. They can't accept it. They can't accept that Hillary's not president. And there was no crime. Firing James Comey is not a crime. There cannot be obstruction. There was never an investigation until the day after when Andrew McCabe opened. An obstruction investigation, which went nowhere, by the way. Has anyone noticed that it went absolutely nowhere? Why? Because it can't. You cannot. That is not obstruction of justice. And when he said go easy on Flynn or go... There was no crime. Flynn didn't do anything wrong, so that's not obstructing of justice. There's no crime. So there was no crime with firing Comey. There was no crime with Michael Flynn. There was no crime with most of what Manafort did. There was no crime with Stormy Daniels. There was no crime with Michael Cohen. There was no crime with George Papadopoulos. There was no crime with Carter Page. There was no crime and no verification of any crimes, any high crimes, misdemeanors, or anything else in the PP dossier, because it's fake, and it was made by his opposition, his opponents. And so what we're going to see here is that the harder the Democrats, the Demon Rats, the anarchist Demon Rat Party, the harder they push, the more it's going to reverse on them, because they don't have the intelligence of a rat in the swamp. They truly don't. Nadler is showing he's so stupid that it's laughable. I mean, people are laughing at Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff obstructed justice.
I see you put your papers away, and I know we're almost finished with this, but before we go, we always need to remember that it doesn't stop in D.C. It goes over the ocean and say a few words about the United Kingdom and its role in this. We cannot forget that.
Well, that's where it actually came from. The second that Hillary needed help, John Podesta, unfortunately, mentioned it. You're not going to believe this, but this is the way that it worked, all right? Hang on to your hats. John Podesta mentioned it to John McCain. Remember, John McCain is one of the evilest people. He's not a Republican. And if he did really die, then hell is very happy at this moment. We know this because in January, he went to the Senate Intelligence Committee and started telling them that he was going to make these connections with Christopher Steele through his man Kramer and Henry Kerner and David Kramer, and through Andrew Woods. Remember, the very first connection that we really know of is when John McCain met with Andrew Wood, and he probably thought this thing up. But anyway, they had to run a Russian buffer zone for Hillary and take the accusations and throw them at Trump. I mean, take the reality of Uranium One and all the Russian connections. Remember, Russian communist connections to her best friend, Vladimir Putin. And who is also best friends with Vladimir Putin? That would be the Queen of England. Remember, they do all their business together for uranium. Remember, they're not enemies. They're allies. In every sense of the word, in terms of any nuclear weapons, America, Britain, and Russia are best friends. We share, the Russians control our uranium, and the enrichment of it is controlled by the Brits. Okay, so when we're talking about what's going on here, this is Arvinder Sambhai. This is Alison Saunders. This is Robert Hannigan. This is Sir Charles Farr and the head of the MI5, Sir Geoffrey Patty, Sir Mark Malloch-Brown, Sir Richard Dearlove, Stephen Halper, Joseph Mifsud, a.k.a. Joseph de Gabriel, Stephen Rowe, Michael Gaeta. Who are they all answering to? Arvinder Sambhai and Alison Saunders.
And don't forget,
period.
Alice and Arvinder is Oslo Mueller's handler, or there is some kind of relationship between the two of them, and it goes back far.
The reports in the newspaper, the Telegraph, stated quite specifically that when this news came, that it was pushed. Right, it came from Britain. In April of 2015, it came from Britain. The first vestiges of the DNC being hacked and Trump being connected to Russians, April 2015. Read the two articles that they just put out in the Telegraph. By the way, the Telegraph had put out, dozens of articles before this, all about George Papadopoulos, which are all the opposite. This is their alibi. But what is their alibi doing? It's covering for them going back to the early spring of 2015. It's covering Papadopoulos and George and Carter Page, and covers Stephen Halper, and covers the four women that they used in counterintelligence to try to seduce George Papadopoulos to get him to say he wanted this stuff. It's all the Brits. And then the Brits, Stephen Halper, who is a Brit and an American, who owns 3 CIA rogue banks in Washington, D.C. He is so corrupt that if you don't know who the Walrus is, then you don't know nothing, okay? He is like the #1 British CIA rogue banker fake intelligence person in America.
Oh, there you go, busting his cover.
The
He'll never be
walrus.
able to work again.
He then came to America and then tried again to, through espionage, continue to seduce George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, Sam Clovis, and poor Carter Page, started riding his bicycle out to visit him in his Virginia home on a very regular basis.
Okay, now we're in the weeds.
But that's the Brit who came to America.
All right, so that's a wrap for today.
And wait, don't forget Bill Browder, who gave tons of money, along with Oleg Deripaska. They're fighting each other, right? But Bill Browder is a Brit, and he gives tons of money to America. And then we have other Russians. I can go on and on and on, but they're all connected to Britain.
Okay, so next time, you and Michael up.